So this is private women's only retreat on the Book of Esther. We're going to learn from this masterful woman how to deal with extremely difficult crises in a relationship, right? So of course, this will be useful for your own relationships with your spouse, but of course you can broaden it with any relationship with any man, right? Whether it's your boss or your son, right? Here we are learning the art of relating to a very difficult man, right? We know that the king in the story is one of the most difficult men in the Hebrew Bible. We see his personality from the beginning. So how many of you took the time to read the story? Let me just put your hand, or know the story. Put the hand in the screen so I know. Okay. So, okay, great. So we're not going to read it. We're just going to fly through it, right? Okay, so basically, first thing, what we'll be discovering, right, really, is the way that she moves from, so Esther in the beginning of the story is a very submissive person, right? If you notice, she's very passive, right? She just follows whatever is going on. There's no language coming out of her mouth. She doesn't speak, right? And then she comes up, and so this would have worked forever, right? She would have been the perfect submissive wife forever if there hadn't been this moment, this crisis where the king decrees that the Jewish people will be destroyed, and that includes her, right? So at that moment, she has to upgrade, right? We talked about this. At that moment, she needs to, in a way, move into a deeper version of herself, right? And she becomes, I believe, the woman she was meant to be at that moment on the crisis point, right? So it's very often the crises, right, in our relationships, which bring us to full-fledged womanhood, right? Before that, we can still be, the nice, submissive, gentle, right? How does Paul say it, Peter? Quiet and gentle spirit, right? This can work forever, right? But when there is a crisis, very often it's an opportunity for the woman to enter into a deeper, to tap into a deeper part of herself and to really blossom as a full-fledged woman. And this is what happens to Esther, right? So there are two moments, right, in her life. There's before the crisis, Esther, and after the crisis, Esther, right? So we're going to look at what I call the 7 virtues of femininity. I'm sorry, 6 virtues of femininity. 3 for before the crisis. These are usually virtues that I would say are dating virtues. These are good virtues to have if you're, still in the, pre-crisis stage, right? These are very good virtues to have. And then you have the virtues after the crisis, right? That bring you out of the crisis. But they're all good. So let me write them down, right? What I have called the 6 feminine virtues of Esther. So number 1, we'll look at beauty. Number 2, discretion. Number 3, flow. Number 4, royalty. Oops, I spelled it wrong. Number 5, joy. And number 6, erotic power. Okay, so these are the 6 virtues we'll be talking about. And moving from the gentle, right, submissive Esther, these are also good virtues, right? In fact, the virtues of power, right? I'm going to talk about the virtues of gentleness, which are the virtues before the crisis, and then the virtues of power. These are the 3 virtues after the crisis. The virtues of power actually depend on the virtues of gentleness. In other words, as a woman, you cannot truly be powerful until you have mastered the art of gentleness, right? So we'll look at this, okay? So, so before we get into these virtues, I want to talk briefly about the confrontation between, or the contrast between Esther and Vashti, right? Remember, Vashti was the queen, first wife, right? She was the first wife. And Vashti actually is a character which is very appreciated in the Jewish tradition. The rabbis, when they talk about Vashti, they actually praise her. Why? Anybody know why the rabbis would be praising Vashti? Why they find her to be an intriguing, interesting character? What do you think?
Was she like a humanitarian or something, or am I making things up?
I mean, in a way, right? If you recall the story, right? The king had a big feast, and Vashti also had a feast at the same time for the ladies, right? And then the king, in a moment of drunkenness, wanted to show off his wife. And he said, he commanded her to come and dance, and show off her beauty in front of everybody. And she flat out refused. She was like, oh, hell no, I'm not doing this, right? So now if you remember the story, what are some of the virtues of Vashti, right? There's virtues, and then we'll see that, there's some issues also. But why would the rabbis appreciate that? Right? What do you think? Penten, go ahead.
Yes, I'm sure they felt he sometimes used the against side of her. Yesterday we spoke about Ke and Neget,
Yes.
something Neget. Yes, and you had said that there are women who are the Ke, which is like, and those who are the Neget, which is just against.
Mm-hmm.
But ideally, it should be a mix of the two. So I think she used more of the negative or the against side, and yes. So.
Yes, well put, right? She's very strong with the neged. She has self-respect. She has a sense of her value. She refuses to be degraded. This is good. The rabbis praise her for being the first feminist, right? But like you said very well, she hasn't yet mastered the art of combining the neged with the ki. Esther, however, is okay until the crisis, right? And that's where you see Esther beginning to combine the two, right? But Vashti, right, very good. She has this, she's good with the neged, she's not good with the K, and that's why ultimately she is eliminated, right? The king gets rid of her. It doesn't work, right? Being only neged doesn't work. You have to find a way, and being only K, we'll see with Esther. She's trying to be that. Doesn't work either. You have to find the art of combining, which Esther does eventually, right? Okay. So Esther, in a way, so we're going to see, right, how Esther is able to eventually bring the two together. Esther starts out with just the values of the K, right? She's passive, submissive, supportive, but eventually she has to rise to the neged, right, to bring things forward. So let's look then at her evolution, right? The first three virtues are the virtues of the K: beauty, discretion, flow. And then you have the virtues of the neged: royalty, joy, erotic power, right? So we're gonna look at that, and then we will see how she evolves as a woman, right? So let's look first at the concept of beauty. The book of Esther always fascinated me because you have such a large section of the book devoted to beauty rituals, right? I don't know if you remember, as she's brought into the harem, right, before meeting the king, she has a 6-month treatment of, I think, myrrh, and then 6 months other treatment with some other products. So we are dealing here with cosmetics. The text mentions, interestingly, the ways of women. So she's being taught, right, the ways of femininity, how to seduce, right? The ways of women, it's a weird passage. And when you read the text, you wonder, what are these ways of women? Actually, I just found a similar expression in a text about the Sumerian goddess Ishtar. So I want to talk a little bit, right, before we get into, because I meant to say, but now I'm going to go into more deeply. So this is if you recall, right, the Hebrews were surrounded by goddess religions, right? So they had a monotheistic approach, but the Sumerians and actually it's not this, it's the Akkadians, I'm sorry. You had the Sumerians and the Akkadians, right, who had goddesses. And so the nations around Israel were worshipped a female deity, right? And one of these goddesses, which is the most famous, is called Ishtar. Now, Ishtar is exactly the name of Esther, right? Esther, we've transcribed it European, but actually the actual name, it could be coming from this Ishtar. So there are connections between the book of Esther, between the figure of Esther and this goddess, right? So this is a whole other cup of tea, right? But there are connections in the way that she I'll just give you quickly the connections, right? Ishtar is a goddess of fertility. She's the goddess that is worshipped in the springtime. And usually the ritual of worship is that the king goes in with a sacred prostitute in the temple of Ishtar, and their union is supposed to make the land fertile, right? And so you have this notion that the king, when he connects to this sacred prostitute, he is actually healing the land, revitalizing the land, right? So we have a similar dynamic here with Esther, right? As she's able to rise up to the occasion and seduce the king, which is what she does in the end of the story, right? The whole land is cleansed, right? The Jews are saved. There's no genocide, right? So you have actually, this is very interesting. This is kind of what I'm working on right now. There are parallels between the story of Esther in the Bible and the story of the goddess Ishtar, right? And in the both texts mention the notion of the ways of women. Right, so when you study that in the text on Ishtar, you see that the ways of women is the art of seduction. How does the woman seduce the man? What are some of the things she can do? So she's being taught this, right? So you have a whole section in the Hebrew Bible on the art of seduction, on the importance of beauty and so forth, which was why that book always fascinated me. So let's ask ourselves a little bit, right? Why is beauty so emphasized here? And to us as Christians, it's a bit foreign, right? Because usually we are taught, even by the New Testament, right, by Peter, beauty, what matters is the inner beauty, right? We are, especially in Adventism, right, we are taught outer beauty is not so important, right? Don't go around adorning yourself, doing all kinds of things. You want to focus on the inner beauty. This text is focusing on the outer beauties very clearly, right? As though it was very important. So I want to ask you a little bit, why do you think that outer beauty might still be important, right? Let's reflect a little bit, because clearly in this text, right, beauty is seen as something of value. It is described, and Esther is described as beautiful. Beauty treatments are emphasized, which is rare in the Bible that you have such details. Why do you think that in terms of a connection with a man, that beauty might be of crucial importance? And by the way, what I mean, let's define a little bit. Well, let me ask you, and then maybe I'll go into how I might define beauty, right? What do you think a little bit? Why is beauty important? Okay, Uwinesa and Apente, go ahead.
Beauty is important for every woman because it attracts his husband, and also it makes her respectful from neighborhoods. Also, when you are beauty, the husband is happy and can really continue to appreciate and respect you.
Okay, excellent, nicely put. Apente, go ahead.
So, unfortunately, men are attracted by what they see.
Unfortunately, why?
I say unfortunately because, so ideally, just like you're saying, inner beauty matters. Okay, but what is actually happening, or the reality of the situation is, someone may have inner beauty and not the outer beauty, and yet may not get the man she wants to be with. So it's in that situation and that context I use unfortunately. He would rather go on with someone who is beautiful and not even have inner beauty and yet suffer in the marriage. So that's the unfortunate aspect. But men were made to be attracted by what they see, and the inner complements the outer for them.
Okay, very good. All right, so let's go a little deeper, because I'm hearing, I want to analyze a little bit what Apenteng said, right? Beauty, we need to understand, and I've thought about it a long time, because for a long time I was trained in the Christian view that beauty doesn't matter, right? And little by little I started to learn another path, right? What I've come to believe is that beauty is love. Let me explain, right? Beauty is the expression of your inner light, right? So the Apostle Peter distinguishes, right, beauty, the inner light, right, inner. What I would like to suggest is that actually physical beauty is the expression of your inner light. Beauty, therefore, is radiance, right? It's not the shape of your nose. It's not the shape of your eyes. It's not the color of your hair. It's not your body weight, right? Beauty is the expression of the inner light. That is what truly makes a woman beautiful. You can see even a woman who is not, you know, like physically there's better, right? If she is radiating this inner light, she will be beautiful, right? Are you following what I'm saying? So what I'm trying to say is that beauty is actually the expression of the inner light. Our physical body is the vessel of the gentle and quiet spirit, or I don't like that expression, but you know, of the inner light that God has put on us, in us, right? And so what we realize is that that's why Peter emphasizes the inner light, right? He's right. But where he fails, I think, fails us as women, is that he doesn't go further to expound on the fact that the physical body is the vessel of the inner light. And so very often we need to take care of the physical body so that we can diffuse this light, right? But very often our physical body is not healthy, our physical body, or we are not able to diffuse the light because we have some trauma. A lot of women who are not beautiful, it's not that they're not beautiful, it's that their light is not coming out because of some psychological trauma, or they have closed themselves up, or you know, their heart has frozen because of some experience, so their light is not coming out, right? So that's the first thing, right? That I would like to reformulate, right? What outward beauty is. Outward beauty is the radiance of the soul, right? Shumko, go ahead.
In Russian, we have like a saying or a common thing that people say, not really a saying, but people say, there are no ugly women, they're just women who are not well looked after.
Very good. Excellent, right? That's exactly it, right? I really believe that every single body shape, skin color, eye color, shape of the nose, if there's radiance coming through, that woman will be stunning, right? We know, like from stories like Cleopatra, right? She was actually ugly physically, I've heard, right? She had a huge nose, right? But because she was such a powerful, charismatic woman, she was stunning and people fell at her feet, right? So that's the first thing I wanted to clarify. Now, the second thing is that we often forget as women is that beauty is love. In other words, when you shine your light in the presence of your spouse or of a man, he sees this as the expression of love. And I've never understood this, right? I've always thought, well, if I'm nice to him, if I'm loving, I do loving things. No, that's not his language, right? The man actually feels loved if you are putting an effort in your beauty. Beauty is the love language of the man. Right? In other words, when, like Uwineza said so well, when you put an effort, right, in being beautiful, he interprets it, right, as being loving. This is the same way, by the way, you know how you like it when you go with your man somewhere, and you like it when he's courteous with you and he opens a door and he pays, you know, for you, and he does little things like that, right? We like that, right? Now, these little actions, you know, they don't seem important because, you know, he might tell you, well, I love you, doesn't matter, I don't need to do this. But for us, it's the expression of love when he opens the door, when he brings us coffee in the morning and so forth, right? In the same way, we can show love by fixing ourselves up. Right? And by working on our light. So there's two things we need to work on basically in order to be beautiful: the inner light, which very often is stuck because of emotional trauma. And for this, we need the process of forgiveness and so forth, right, in order to be able to shine again. And the second thing is the vessel. We need to fix up the vessel so that the light can come through. If the vessel is all dark and dreary, how is the light going to come through? If your vessel is toxic, right, your body is toxic, you are not healthy physically, this is keeping the light from coming through, right? So that's the idea. First thing that I might say that we can learn from this text is the importance of beauty as an expression of love, right? Does this help a little bit? Are you following me? Okay. So that's the first thing, right? This is elementary, right? This is the basis, one of the bases for coming in contact with a man, right? The beauty is very important as an expression of our inner light and as ultimately an expression of love, right? A man will feel loved by the way that we fix ourselves up, right? If we, right. Okay, so let's go to the second virtue, which is discretion. Okay, discretion means simply, for those who don't know, it means reserve, right? Holding back, not taking the whole space. And we see Esther, right? She's a champion of this, right? By the way, Esther, the word Esther in Hebrew, could come from the word Esther, which means hidden, right? So there is, even in her name, a dimension of hiddenness. And then we see in the text that she does not make known, right? Her deeper self, her true name is not made known, right? So I want to elaborate a little bit on this, right? The virtues of discretion. What does it mean? So we talked about the importance of radiating, but now we're talking about the importance of holding back our light. What does it mean to hold back our light in the virtue of discretion? And how is this an act of love also, right? Does anybody want to try and figure this out? So you're choosing not to shine too brightly for the sake of the other person. How would that play out? You're choosing to keep part of you to yourself, not shining everything out. Right? How would that play out? Anybody want to try? Uwinesa? Shumko? Okay, good, Shumko. I'm going to come back to that to keep the interest. There is, in the Jewish tradition, in the Orthodox Jewish tradition, there's a concept called tzniut, which literally means discretion, right? And this concept is the notion that the woman needs to keep parts of herself hidden. So it's interesting. So in the way they dress, right, they hide certain body parts. But tzniut, or discretion, in the Hebrew tradition extends beyond just the physical to also the inner light. In other words, the woman learns in the Jewish tradition not to reveal everything, right? When you're on a date, you don't go and talk about all your problems. You don't reveal all of your emotions right away, right? You want to keep a certain mystery, right? The idea of I'm going to reveal myself a little bit at a time, right? Not all at once, right? So this is especially good in dating, right? This is in a marriage, obviously much more is transparent, but as you're dating, right, you want to give yourself a little bit at a time and not blurt everything out, or always want to be with the person, or always want to talk about everything and say everything about yourself, right? You want to be able to keep like a secret garden, right? Uwinesa, go ahead.
Yeah, in the affair of dating or in relationship, you should have some secret and you have something new to reveal to your husband or your spouse. In our culture, we have they said, when you talk too much, when you talk everything, no one wants to hear you. You just should keep quiet, then people want to hear you. So it is just discretion. And when you see something on your husband, you should keep for you, not to talk to your family or your friend. It is also discretion.
You got it. Absolutely. Right. Not always talking, monopolizing the conversation, right? Flowing all the time, right? You want to sometimes keep quiet, allow the other person to rest in your presence instead of constantly being harassed by your problems and your emotions, right? So the ability to hold back, not only within the marriage, but also outside. You don't want the marriage, what is happening in the marriage, to pour outside, right? So this is we have a text in the book of Proverbs which says a beautiful woman without discretion is like a gold ring in a pig's snout. I don't know if you recall this passage, right? So it's not enough to be beautiful. You have to also be able to be discreet, mysterious, right? Shumko, go ahead.
But what do you do if you're naturally talkative? If this is your personality?
So it's fine. You have to be yourself, right? But you have to kind of gauge. It's like, okay, let me give you an example, right? Suppose you're a natural gifted at music, right? So you pick up the instrument and you want to play. you still have to learn to restrain your fingers, I'm a violinist, so I'm doing this gesture, right? You have to learn where to put the fingers, where to put the bow. You can't just go, wah, even if you're talented, right? So even if you're naturally expressive, you still have to learn to polish, right? To refine your expression. So you can talk a lot, but you have to know how to refine it so that it's not too much. Just like when you pick up an instrument, even if you have the passion for music and you just want to play, it's going to sound awful if you don't learn certain limits, right? So I think definitely everything, right? A plant, which is exuberant, still needs to be trimmed, right? So we need to learn to trim our personalities, not destroy them, right? But trim them so that the other can be in a pleasant atmosphere, right? Does that make sense, Shumko? So, so definitely you can be very fiery. You can be very passionate. That's why I have the Peter, right? With a gentle and, I'm never going to stop with this one. Gentle and quiet spirit doesn't apply to every woman, right? But even if you are fiery and passionate, right? You want to do it in a way that is artful, right? That is polished, not, wow. So that's the idea, right? Good. All right, so let's go to the, you guys are doing great. I love it. The third virtue, so still with K virtues, right? Like, so these are nice, all men like these virtues, right? No confrontation yet, but these are the basis. If you cannot master these, when the confrontation comes, you will not do well, right? I want to be very clear on that, right? That if you don't master these, the values of K, right? Like, when you get to the neged, you're going to be like Vashti, right? So these are foundational. One must first develop these before one can powerfully engage in the neged part, right? Okay, the third one that I noticed with Esther is the virtue of flow. And this, I mean, all of these virtues, by the way, I struggle with. I have to say, these are not easy for me. But I love the virtue of flow. This is somebody, Esther, who goes with the flow. She doesn't grab and she doesn't block. So I want to emphasize these two, right? These are two ways that we want to take control of the relationship, especially in the dating, right? But also in the marriage, of course, right? We want to either grasp and be in control, or we want to block something, right? And very often we do this also in the dating. Esther neither grasps nor blocks, right? When it's time to go to the king, she's asked, what do you want to bring with you? And she says, I will take whatever the eunuch tells me to take. So she's kind of, really, she's not taking, forcing, she's not blocking, right? So let me emphasize these two, right? So flow, the virtue of flow, not forcing, but also not blocking. So let's talk a little bit about that, right? Shumko, you want to say something first?
Maybe go ahead and explain, and then if I still have questions,
Okay,
I'll come back.
All right. So I'm talking, let's talk first about dating and then we can connect to marriage. I mean, so in the dating situation, very often we have two reactions as a woman. Either we get anxious and we want to force the relationship to go faster or to go in a certain direction. And here we are grasping, right? We are trying to force the commitment. We're trying to make things happen faster. We want to control. Or in a marriage, right? We want to force, right, something to happen that we want to happen. So here we are grasping like Eve, right? Grasping. Or we master the art of blocking. So this is the opposite kind of woman. She's dating, the man is interested in her, but now she's blocking because, oh, he's not the right person and my parents don't approve and, I'm not sure if, and we start to create all kinds of obstacles and walls, right? This is another type of woman to the relationship on the basis of what we hear from our family. Very often, sometimes our family is against it or we are not sure that this is the right person. And so instead of allowing the relationship to take place, and to flow, we are often blocking. Or even in a marriage, right? The husband or the spouse is taking an initiative. He wants to offer you something or he wants you to experience something. And we're like, no, I don't like that, or I don't have time, right? So we tend to block or grasp, right? So it's interesting, right? That what we're learning here is the art of going with the flow, the art of receiving, instead of grasping or blocking, right? Let me write this down. This is the art of receiving instead of grasping, right? You see the difference, or blocking. right? Very often we want to be in control, and we don't let the man, we keep him from doing things from us, right? Suppose, I mean, this happens to me a lot, right? The man comes, oh, I would like to take you out to this restaurant. And I will say, I don't like this restaurant. Let's go to this one, right? Or the man will say, I think, we should buy this, it would be nice for the house to buy this. And I'll be like, I don't like that. I want to do this, right? And so as we are constantly not able to receive, the man slowly going to stop giving, right? Very often, if you're in a relationship where the man is not giving you what you desire, look in yourself. What kind of a receiver have you been all those years, right? Are you able to receive from the man, even if it's not according to your agenda, right? Often as women, we have an agenda. This is what I want. And he's coming with some other weird thing, right? And so what we're learning here with Esther is the art of receiving the man and what he's bringing, his wisdom, his advice, his initiatives, his gifts, right? Because if you stop receiving, the guy is going to go in a corner and he's not going to do or say anything anymore, right? So this is difficult, especially for a woman who is very headstrong and who is very independent and who has a clear view of who she is, where she is going. And now there's this other being trying to steer her in another direction, right? But this is the cost, right, of being in relationship, right? The art of allowing yourself to receive something that you wouldn't have thought for yourself, right? Going with the flow and neither forcing nor blocking, right? What the man is doing for you, right? Very often we want to force the man. This doesn't work. Or we don't receive what he's giving. And in that moment, right, the man does not feel loved, because we have to remember that men love by giving, right? So if we are not receiving, they're going to feel unloved, right? We love by receiving. The man feels loved when we receive his ideas, his advice, his gifts, right? His initiatives. So Shumko, now I've clarified a little bit. Did you want to say something?
Actually, that's really interesting, because I've been most of my life one of those people who just go with the flow. But at some point, a few people pointed out that it's not good and you're not really going anywhere. So I was trying to change. So I always thought of it as a negative thing, which is interesting now. But also it could come across as someone who's not thinking for themselves, who can't express or has an issue expressing what they want.
Yeah, so we'll see, right, that Esther has an issue expressing what she wants, right? And she has to learn that, right? But, and we'll see, she eventually gets there. But going with the flow is still a beautiful virtue, because when you're going with the flow, you're simply allowing, right? You're allowing, in a way, yourself to be guided by life, right? You're allowing your followers opportunities that open. When we do non-Western ethics today, we're going to talk about the Chinese way. The Chinese way is all about flow, right? It's all about being attentive to the present moment and what is needed now, without having a fixed agenda, right? Allowing nature to guide us, right? So I would say in Christian words that going with the flow is a way of moving by the Spirit, right? Trusting that the Spirit is opening and closing doors and allowing ourselves to go with that flow. That's how I see it, right? That's how I translate it. So if you believe that, if you're aligned with the Holy Spirit, right? If you have put your life in God's hands, then you just wait to see what opens up, what closes up, right? And you kind of follow the signs in the outside world. You see, oh, this door has opened because I'm trying to live by the Spirit. I will go there. If this door closed, I will not go. Am I making more sense, Shumko? So you're living by the Spirit. That's how you should see it, right? This is life by the Spirit. Life by the, so there's two types of Christians, right? There's those who follow the scripture, but then Jesus was trying to teach us another way, right? Which is to live by the Spirit. When you live by the Spirit, you can't have your agenda, right? You can't have a fixed agenda of what's going to happen today. You have to remain open. and see where the spirit takes you. And very often the spirit moves through outside opportunities or outside obstacles, right? So I would see it like that. Esther, in a way, knows how to move by the spirit, right? And only then is she able to properly express her desires, right? When the time comes. Am I making sense so far? Okay. So now we have to move into the crisis and the 7 virtues of power, or three virtues of power, right? But again, as a woman, we have to develop the virtues of gentleness. So Peter was right halfway, right? We have to develop these virtues if we're good, the virtues of the K, if we are to really succeed with the neged, right? The virtues of power. So let's look. So first of all, reminding you, right? So Esther has been moving like this. She's discreet, she's beautiful, she's going with the flow. She's the perfect woman in a man's mind, right? I mean, what man would not like a woman who is beautiful and discreet and, you know, able to go with the flow and receive, right? And be surrendered to him. I mean, this is all gorgeous, right? But there comes a time where the crisis arises, right? And this is exactly what happens. And Esther is not ready, right? We see that she does nothing about it. She's trying to continue with the virtues of gentleness. And it takes Mordechai, right, her uncle, to come and be like, do you think you're going to escape? I don't think so, right? You better upgrade. You have to move to the next level. You have to tap into a deeper part of yourself if we're going to survive. In other words, he's saying you need to move into the next level of your womanhood if we're going to survive, right? So she has to do this. So let's look at how she does this, right? So the first one, what did I put in the virtue of royalty, right? Okay, so let's look at that one. So virtue of royalty. So there's something very peculiar that Esther does at the moment of the crisis, which signifies the transition into the woman she's going to become, right? So number one, I was struck by how she puts on her royal robes, right, to see the king. We're going to talk about the prayer in a second, but the royal robes marks the transition, right? She's no more the concubine. Up until now, she was like, I know she was the wife, but she was acting like a concubine, right? She was all, you know, completely available, no speech, no words is coming out of Esther. She's not really yet an equal to the king. She's not really yet a spouse. She's still in the role, even though she's married to the king, she's still in the role of the concubine, right? Putting on the royal robe signifies I am now individuating as a full-fledged, equal spouse woman. This is the moment, the true moment of her arriving to the status of a spouse. But notice what she does first, right? The prayer. I want to talk a little bit about that, right? So when the crisis arises, it is not yet time for action, right? It is a time where the woman has to begin to mature inwardly. Before she can enter into the stages of power, the woman has to take a step back and process the situation and pray. And we know what the prayer is. We talked about the prayer last time when we talked about forgiveness and so forth, right? This is an inner preparation, right? We talked about this with Abigail yesterday, right? Before you confront anyone, you have to bring yourself back to a place of love, right? Imagine if Esther had stormed into the king's palace and says, you stupid idiot, don't you know I'm Jewish? How could you do this, you moron, right? No, she knows she has to center herself, bring herself to a place of love, bring herself to a place of availability to the spirit, right? You can't just go right after the crisis and deal with it. There has to be this moment. And this is where she is now shifting. Any woman, right, who wants to enter her full-fledged womanhood has to have a spiritual practice, right? Otherwise, you're just being bounced back and forth. The spiritual practice is what allows you to access this deeper part, which is going to blossom into full-fledged womanhood, right? So there's this notion, right, of coming back to a place of love, of asking God for guidance, for the resources of love, for the right language, for the right timing. When do I speak? What do I say? How do I say it, right? All of this we can't do on our own. We need to be, right? So Esther, in a way, at that moment, for the first time, she is acquiring a spiritual practice, which she didn't have before, right? So that's the first step, right? And then, of course, once she has done this work on herself, she is now has enough connection to her deeper self to put on those royal robes, right? The royal robes signify that she has now achieved a status of daughter of God, right? Does that make sense? When Esther turns to prayer, she's basically visualizing herself no more as a concubine, but as a daughter of the Most High. At that moment, you are profoundly empowered to do whatever you need to do, right? Once you have established yourself as the daughter of the Most High, who can stop you? You have all the resources of the Most High to deal with your situation. You have all the wisdom, you have all the love, you have everything, right? There is no moment where a woman needs to feel disempowered. No matter how terrible the situation is, we are always powerful when we get to this source of power, right? Which is to find a connection to God, right? Any comments on this before we go to the last two virtues of power? Okay. Today we'll talk a little bit in the non-Western ethics. I'm going to mention at the end the ethics of Jesus, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about this the way that we can connect, right? And achieve and individuate as daughters of the Most High, so that we can put on those royal robes and enter the king's palace, right? For the confrontation. Now, let's go to the last two. So you have the virtue. So number 5 is the virtue of joy. I want to talk a lot about this because this is so important. This is a powerful virtue. So notice how Esther proceeds, right? She goes in the king and she enters the court. She's not allowed. She does it. And the king, he's happy to see her, thankfully. Right? He says, what do you want? I'll give you half my kingdom, right? And she's like, well, all I want is for you to come to a feast that I've prepared. And I've always wondered, right? What is the meaning of this? Why is she preparing a feast and not just saying what she has to say? And notice she does it twice. At the feast, he asks her, and she's like, all I want is to have another feast. So how have you understood this passage? What are we learning here? What does it mean to prepare a feast before the confrontation? What is the wisdom here that we can learn from Esther? Shumko, go ahead.
Well, we know from the Bible that one of the things what was happening behind the scene was the situation with, what's his name, Haman or something?
With what? Oh, Haman, yeah, sure.
Haman, yeah. So this was going on during this period, I think. That's what I remember.
It seems like there is no time for feasting. I mean, the situation is very urgent. The Jews are about to be genocided and she wants to have a party. What's she doing? Right? Apenteng, help us.
Okay, so what comes to mind, and I would liken it to the situation of Abigail, Nabal, David, where before a confrontation, she bore gifts, or she prepared herself, was part of the preparation in terms of trying to appease David. So I'll see it from that angle where she wanted to appease him or bring gifts or some kind of sacrifice before deciding to let out whatever she wanted to tell him.
Okay, very good, very good. Yes, I think definitely there is a notion of appeasement. I think if Shumko, would you like to add to that? I think you're saying something similar. Go ahead.
I guess feast is something happy. It's a celebration. It's really pleasant. So it just puts you in a really nice mood. And knowing, working with people in my office, I know when to approach my supervisor and when to stay away. or especially when I need a decision or something serious to be discussed, I know when not to discuss, for sure.
Excellent, excellent. So she's trying to create the right moment, right? Adamovic, what do you have to say?
There is expression in Serbia that a way to man's heart is through his stomach.
We have the same in French. Very good. Yes. Okay. So let me elaborate a little bit, right? You're all getting it, but here's how I am seeing it. This is foreplay. Okay, so let me explain what I mean by foreplay, right? Let me first start with the way that the man does it to the woman, and then we will see what we are doing, right? So you know how before the man can open you physically, there has to be foreplay, right? You can't just come, right? You gotta, caress you, kiss you, do a few things, right? And then you're ready to open up physically to the man, right? We call this foreplay in English. So what is interesting here is that she needs here to also open the man. But she is here having to open not his body, but his heart, right? She needs to create this opening in the king's heart in order so that she can be heard, right? So what she's doing here is something very powerful, which is the kind of foreplay that woman needs to do to open her man's heart, right? And the foreplay is not physical like the man does, it is emotional. Right. So let me in the Chinese tradition, I won't talk about it today, obviously, in the mixed audience, but they have the notion that the woman and the man are different in terms of the places that are open. So in the Chinese tradition, the man is open or is aggressive in the lower regions of the genitals, and the woman is open in the heart. So we are good, but in the heart. But the woman is closed in the lower regions, and the man is closed in the heart, right? So the woman is closed in the heart, open in the genitals. The woman is closed in the genitals, open in the heart. So in other words, they need to be opened, right? We need to be opened physically. The man, however, needs to be opened emotionally. And the type of foreplay that he needs for his heart to open is joy. In other words, if the man senses that around him you are happy, his heart will open, right? So it's not even about making him happy, right? When Esther creates the feast, it's not about just pleasing him. It's about creating this atmosphere of joy where she is herself enjoying herself in the presence of the king. She's happy, she's enjoying herself. There is no negative feelings, there is no criticism, there is no complaining, just joy. And at that moment, the king's heart opens and he says, what do you want? Another party, right? Open a little more, because what I'm going to say is huge, right? So she is basically doing foreplay, emotional foreplay, so that the man's heart can open, right? Am I making sense? Does this make sense what I'm saying? Right? And we often don't understand that just like we need foreplay, the man needs foreplay. If you come to the man about an issue, or even if you are in general depressed, sad, right? If you are in the marriage and you're feeling depressed and you're sad or you're angry all the time or you're anxious all the time, the man's heart is going to slowly close. Why? Because you are taking away the atmosphere that his heart needs to open. We don't understand this as women, because for us, it's not a problem among women. If you're depressed, my heart will open, right? If one of you is with me and I'm seeing you're sad and depressed, on the contrary, my heart will open. I will listen to you. I want to help you, right? It's the opposite with a man. If he sees you all depressed and sad, he feels like, I'm not safe, right? I'm not safe here. I need to close up. So it's kind of a strange thing for us, right? And so that's why it's so important in a marriage to cultivate joy. So my grandmother, right, who was, this is the old generation. I asked her for some marital advice, and she said in German, right, she was German, she said, immer fröhlich. I'm always happy, she says. I am always happy. And I used to think, what does that even mean? What are you talking about? Right? But little by little, I started to understand that when you cultivate joy within yourself, when you try, even if you're depressed, obviously there are moments when we will be depressed, right? Or sad, but to try to still, put on it's a basic civility, basic courtesy, right? When you cultivate joy within yourself, it's not just about you. You are creating the atmosphere that the man needs to open his heart. If you're constantly depressed and aggressive and sad and anxious, the man will slowly withdraw, because the climate, he needs a certain climate to open up. Just like we need a certain climate to open up physically, right? I need you to do this, put little candles here, soft music there, give me a kiss and blah, blah, blah. And now I'm ready, right? Don't just come at me, So it's the same. The man needs a certain atmosphere for his heart to open. That's why it's so important as women to really create or cultivate joy, right? And especially when there's a problem, right? If there is a problem you have to deal with, right? Instead of coming, and say, I'm really, this is creating a lot of problems for me. I'm very angry. And you come with this emotional, right? Negativity is not, no conversation will happen. However, if you come and you're joyful and you're in a good moment, and then you playfully mention in passing the thing he did the other day, right, with a smile, you can be sure that he will listen. Are you following what I'm saying? Right? So very often the tone of our voice is very important. You can say the same thing to a man with an angry, bitter, bitchy tone, or you can be in a great moment having a party and be like, by the way, that thing you did, what was that? Right? And smile and laugh, and the man will be like, oh babe, I'm sorry, that was stupid, you're right, and it's done. Right? Whereas if you come, you stupid idiot, when you did that, I felt so degraded, and he'll be like a little animal in the shell. You will not get him out to talk to you, right? So that's so important. What Esther is teaching us here is the virtue of joy in general, but especially when there's a conflict. You want to create in yourself, in the moment, playful atmosphere, nice, pleasant atmosphere. And at that moment, playfully, you can mention the thing, and then you wait, right? So any comments on this one, or questions on this virtue? You're smiling, that's a good sign. Okay, this one's a tough one. Yeah, Shumko, go ahead, tell us. I know.
Well, I think you know what it feels like when you're upset. You last thing you want is be nice to that person and smile, and yeah.
Yeah,
Takes, I mean, it takes a lot of control of your emotions, and yeah, it's a really tough.
I would say, just to make you feel better, for a man to create an atmosphere of foreplay physically, it takes a lot of control of his emotions, right? It's not easy for a man to restrain himself and create the atmosphere for you to open up physically, right? The man just wants to get it done in 3 minutes. Right? So think of it like that, right? It's foreplay, it's allowing the space for the man to open up, just like you want him to allow the space for you to open up. But you're right, this joy is not possible if you haven't done the first thing, which is the prayer, right? This is why before she gets to the joy, she has 3 days of fasting. There's no joy there. So this is not about acting like you're happy no matter what, right? This is not about the 50s in the United States where you're always smiling, everything is fine. No, before she was able to authentically express joy, she had to go through 3 days of fasting and prayer and weeping. And so the biblical text will never tell us to fake it, right? The biblical text is saying, process first, go through your emotions, the anger, the resentment, and bring it to God. Because if you bring it like that in its raw form to the man, nothing's going to happen, right? Unless you're with a very exceptional man. Well, even exceptional men, they will not be able to process this wave of emotion, right? Men are not like us. They don't have the, I don't know, if we come with a huge wave of emotion, they want to run away and hide, right? So this is why first we have to bring this big wave of emotion to God and to be appeased by God. Is not the man gonna appease you, no. Right? Once you've boiled it down and you found your joy again, the joy which is possible only because you have full trust in the Creator and because you know you are a daughter of the Most High. Let me put this guy in the breakout room, okay? Just a second. See, we have a guest. Okay. Kayumba, I'm sending you away. We'll be done soon. Please accept. Let me see. I'm going to wait till Kayumba joins his breakout room. And then we will continue. Kayumba, we're still in the private women's session. So I'm sending you to a breakout room. Can you accept, please, and join? Okay, great. All right. Awesome. So where was I? Yeah. Where was I? What was I saying? Can someone please tell me?
Joy, trust in God.
Yeah. Right. We can't
Going
get
down.
to that place of joy if we haven't yet realized that we are daughters of the Most High, right? Once you are in that place where you realize God will give you all the resources you need, then you can be joyful. It's okay. It's going to be fine, right? So now you're at peace. Okay, now I'm going to do this party. I'm going to rejoice because I know that God has my back here, right? He's going to give me the resources I need of love, of wisdom, of the right timing, and so forth, right? Yeah, exactly, Winessa, right? Do you want to elaborate a little bit? Speak.
Yeah, I think we need, when we talk about joy, when there is a situation you want to handle, you should think about it. Don't react when you are angry. Create a space of a space of joy, of love. Then you try to negotiate or you try to talk to the person. You start to talk to, sorry, you start to talk to the person. Otherwise, when you are angry, the other person will be more angry than you.
Exactly, right? You want to get to a place of love and joy because that is the only way you will be heard, right? I'm talking about, being efficient. Of course, you would love to tell them your mind, right? And tell them everything that you want to tell them, but this is not going to lead to results, right? If we want results, we can express ourselves, but we have God, right, to express ourselves. And then when we're ready, put together, confident, we go, right? So absolutely, Shumko, right? People mirror our emotions. So if we come all nasty, the guy is going to be even worse, right? Because he will be hurt and he will retaliate and nothing will get done, right? Excellent. So are we ready to go to the last virtue, the erotic power? I'll explain what I mean by that. I know that word scares everybody. I once proposed to a church to do a retreat on Esther, and I used that word erotic power and they turned me down. They were like, we don't want to talk about this. So what I mean by erotic power is this. Eros in Greek, right, simply means desire, okay? So erotic power, what I mean by that is the power of desire, right? Okay, so let's talk a little bit about that. This is now coming back to Shumko's concern, right? Oh, I see another man. Cool, I am putting you in the breakout room because we are not done yet. So hold on, where did he go? Where'd he go? He left, he just left, okay. Or he's invisible. Cole, if you're invisible, I do not approve. You can either leave the meeting and come back at 12:30, or I can put you in a breakout room with Kayumba. I know there's a way to make yourself invisible. Okay, we'll imagine that he's gone. Okay, so so let's talk a little bit about, and going back to what Shumko was saying, the power of desire, right? So Shumko, you're saying you're going with the flow, but then people tell you you need to have more initiative. It's coming now, right? Power of desire. I want to talk a little bit about this because this is also the power of our desires are also have a very strong seductive power. In other words, we are told that to seduce a man, we have to be physically attractive and, be all, passive and so forth. But actually, nothing seduces a man more than a woman who is able to express her desires with vulnerability. Let me write this down, right? Nothing seduces a man more than a woman capable of expressing her desires with vulnerability. So let me explain, right? So first of all, why is a man so taken by a woman who expresses her desires? Well, it's very simple, right? The man is wired to respond to desire, right? One of the most pleasant things for a man, believe it or not, is to respond to your desire and to fulfill your desire. When he does this, he feels so amazing, right? So for example, when a man feels that he's making you happy, that's basically what I'm talking about, right? When a man feels that he's fulfilling you, that he's making you happy, he feels like a stud, right? He feels like nothing can stop him. This gives him enormous power, right? It gives him an enormous sense of power when he feels that he can actually make you happy. So when you come to a man with a desire, which is properly expressed, as we'll talk in a second, this is giving him an opportunity to be the man, right? So actually men love it. One of the most pleasant, enjoyable things for a man, empowering things for a man, is to realize that he has fulfilled a desire, right? The problem is that they often don't know what we want. This is the issue, because we don't say anything, right? So they're stumbling around, right, in the darkness, and we are always unhappy because we don't say anything, and so they feel like complete losers, and so then they withdraw, right? So one of the best ways you can awaken the man's love or empower the man or give him a sense of being a man is by coming with a simple desire expressed in vulnerability, by which I mean you're not forcing him, you're not manipulating him, you're just saying, you know, babe, I would love this, and then you stop. I would love, right? I would love to go there on vacation, or I would love, you know, a quiet time tonight, or I would love, you know, whatever it is you desire, right? You express it without the kind of manipulation or pressure. No pressure, just, I'd love. And then you just go. And now the man has information, right? So he's happy. Now, he might not respond right away, right? Maybe he needs to think how he's going to do this, or maybe he doesn't have time right now, or maybe he needs to process what you just said, right? But I can guarantee you, any desire well expressed eventually will come back to you, right? Because the man wants this. He loves doing this, right? And so we need to remember, as women, we forget that our desires, when we express them, it is actually an act of love, right? We are able, this is the way that we can awaken in the man the power, right? So that's the idea. So we see that Esther, right, when she finally speaks after this long preparation, notice how she speaks, right? She's not forcing, she's just begging. She's saying, I am Jewish, you know, this is a terrible thing that is going to happen, and I'm putting, you know, this into your hands, and, you know, I would like to live, I would like my people to live. She expresses her desires, and the king responds, right? Because of the way, that the skill, right, that she has done this. So there's something else here in my notes that I really want to look at really quick. Yeah, I was just writing, there's nothing more attractive to a man than a woman in tune with the desires of her heart and who knows to express them in a loving way, right? This is incredibly attractive when the woman is not just passive, going here and there, where she actually has some desires and she knows how to express them, right? This is the spice of the relationship. And by the way, we need to realize, I know a lot of us don't want to express desires because we feel, well, that would be selfish, you know, I don't want to be selfish, right? We need to realize the wisdom of our desires, right? Our desires are actually wise. A lot of the times, think about all the desires you have. One of the exercises I could give you is to make a list of your desires. Think of all the desires you have for the relationship. Are these not amazing desires that would shift the dynamic of the relationship, bring you into the upgrade, right, system of values, make everything better? Very often, the women's desires are not really for her, they're for the relationship. Our desires, very often, are relational, right? And so there's a wisdom there in our desire. The desires is giving us the vision of where we could go, where the relationship can evolve, right? What direction the relationship can take. There is deep wisdom in many of our desires with regards to the vision that our desires are projecting, the vision of where we could be as a couple, of where I could be as a woman, of where you could be as a man, right? And so we have to realize that desires are really visions, prophetic visions, right? And in that sense, they're very wise. And so when we abstain from expressing our vision for the relationship stagnates and eventually dies, because the visionary in the relationship is not the man, it's you, right? You're the visionary. This is our special gift that God has given us, is that we can envision where things need to go, right? And so at that moment, when you express it, you are not only empowering the man to use his executive powers to accomplish the vision, right, which the man enjoys, but you're also shifting the dynamic of the relationship. That's why I tell women, all desires are good, right? All desires are good. All desires, it is so important to remain connected to one's desires. And too often we repress our desires because we don't want to, we don't want to create tension. We don't want to be perceived as selfish. And so very often many women are disconnected from their desires. And you know what happens then? Their light goes out. And so goodbye beauty. No more beauty when your light goes out. You can tell a woman who is disconnected from her desires to a woman who is connected to her desires from the radiance that she emits, right? A woman who remains connected, she is radiant. She is in a way beautiful, right? But when you start to close your heart, to repress your heart's desires, your heart begins to shrink and the light from your heart is not shining anymore. So in many ways, right, many women crush their desires because we've been told in the church, right, don't desire, just submit, right, surrender. What we're learning from Queen Esther is that our desires need to be tapped into and expressed, not just for us, but for the sake of the relationship, right? Any comments or questions on the erotic power that we all have, but we are not using? The power of our desires to transfigure the relationship. Any comment or observation? Now, so I'm going to give you the assignment. I'll conclude in a second, but just so you know, I'm going to give you the assignment to write down. We're going to take like a break before the next session, to write down 10 desires that you have in general, and to put them a place where you can read them every day. And to begin to learn to express them, right, in a way that is not full of pressure. Because this is really, we have become so disconnected from the source of wisdom that our desires are tapping into, right, that we are losing our power, our neged, right? So I'm going to ask you as an exercise when we're done to write these 10 desires, put them in a place where you can read them every day, and you will see little by little, you'll be able to express them, and the desires as well as the relationship will move forward. So the conclusion of the story, right? Notice that in the end, right? It's not just Esther that benefits, it's the king, right? The king changes. The king who used to be a tyrannical, spoiled brat, right? We see that in the beginning of the story when he wants his wife to do this and she doesn't do it. He, throws her away, right? Now we have a king who is sharing power with his wife. I mean, it is quite extraordinary. This is a unique moment in the Bible where a queen is also making laws, right? Esther is making decrees alongside the king. They are in perfect harmony at their equality, right? They have become in a way a power couple, right? They're both, she is, and he is letting her, right? This king who was, idiotic in the beginning, barbaric, brute, right? Now he's the king who is listening to her, who is attentive to her, who is creating space for her to be a powerful woman, who is empowering her, right? This is not the same man, right? This is not the same man. So what happens, right? when a woman comes to herself, becomes her true self, it is amazing how this allows the man to become his true self, right? So anytime the woman is individuating as a woman, if she does it right, she can raise the man up along with her, right? As she is individuating, as she is rising, if she does it right, she can raise up her own spouse along with her, right? And the whole world benefits, right? We see how the genocide is stopped, it's interrupted, the land is different, there is peace out of this union from the man and the woman, right? There is a really powerful redemptive force that comes from a united couple, right? So that's the idea here, right? That whatever we're doing as we're evolving as women can have a profound impact on the man, positive impact on the man. We should never be afraid of conflict, because again, it's an opportunity not only for us to grow, but for the man to grow, right? Okay, any questions on anything I said? I've come to the end of my introduction on Esther. Anything you want to add? Okay, very well. So we'll take a break. They will come back in about 10 minutes for the non-Western values that Uwinesa what's the word, ordered, right? Just like on the menu. And we'll be talking in these non-Western values at the end of Jesus ethics, right? We haven't talked yet about the ethics of Jesus. We've talked about the ethics of the Hebrew Bible, right? But we haven't yet looked at Jesus, right? So we'll end with Jesus, and this will give us some element of personal ethics, right? So thank you. This was just so much fun. I really enjoyed it. Now we have some good advice from this, amazing, powerful woman. I'm glad you enjoyed it. And now we have some of the men coming, and that's fine. We're done. So I'm going to stop the recording.